God bless Joe Manchin. I know I've said that quite a bit, and I am somewhat playing into his hand of what he's trying to do. And you know what? I don't really care. I get that he's a dirtbag politician like all the rest. I have no illusions about him being a great guy or anything. But it's a fact that he being the tiebreaker vote on so many issues, along with Kirsten Sinema, is doing quite a bit to keep Congress from being as bad as it otherwise would be. Gridlock is the best thing you can have in Congress, because when there's gridlock, they're not doing anything, and whenever Congress is passing bills, Americans are losing freedom. I mean, by definition, they're creating new laws. They're restricting us more. And Joe Manchin is doing a good job at blocking laws and bills from being passed in the U.S. Senate. Now, what I'm referring to today is this crazy new rule that the Dems and I guess spearheaded by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, former chairman of the Federal Reserve, was this idea that the IRS was going to track all of your bank account activity if you had inflows or outflows of $600 a year or more, which who doesn't have $600 moving either in or out of their bank account every year? You wouldn't be able to function in society. So what this was essentially was a law saying the IRS was going to track everyone's bank accounts. And they already do this. If you move more than $10,000 out, the FBI is notified by the bank, which is already, very creepy and uncomforting, discomforting. We already have massive invasions of privacy when it comes to our money. It's very hard to keep your money private in this country. And we don't necessarily want the IRS looking at every single transaction in our bank accounts, because maybe there's some things there that we would like to keep private and that could be used to blackmail us. Particularly if you ever get to be, let's say, an important person who is doing something impactful with respect to the regime. Perhaps the IRS could just go back in their files a few years and say, hey, is it true that you subscribed to this Twitch Thoughts OnlyFans? And, they could use that information to blackmail someone. Just as an example, that was just the first thing that came to mind off the top of my head. But obviously, there's, with information about every single financial transaction that a person performs, everything that they buy or sell over the course of their entire lifetime, what more could the government do to monitor you, aside from literally giving you some sort of android robot to follow you around and watch your every move? So Joe Manchin apparently was talking to Joe Biden and said that this was messed up and that this was, essentially a creepy police state law, and that, it should not happen. And Joe Biden apparently agreed, and he said, yeah, man, that's messed up. That's a crazy idea. Who would ever put that in there? And it sounds like, and now we're hearing from CNBC, they're saying, hey, this is out of the bill. This is not going to happen. So this is something that just, a month or two ago, we weren't thinking about happening at all anyway. It was a brand new invasion of our privacy, but at least it's not actually going to happen now. It's hard to call it a victory because, this wasn't something that we've ever had to worry about. A couple months ago, this was not an issue. So it's, why call it a victory? We haven't gotten any of our freedoms back. We just, haven't lost as much, I guess, as we thought we potentially were going to last week. So thanks to Joe Manchin, the American people were able to escape this newest surveillance tactic for now. And again, I can't stress enough how invasive this would be for every single person. You would have zero privacy to do anything in your life, to purchase anything. It's kind of like the little known thing with Obamacare, where they tried to seize everyone's medical records, and thankfully that was put to a stop. But if the government just had copies of the medical records of everyone in the country, they could use those records to blackmail people. Financial records, your bank statements, is even more uh, invasive, to say the least. I mean, it's obviously you can see a lot more about a person from their bank account than you can from their medical records. I mean, it's amazing that they could put something as impactful pretty much as the entire Patriot Act was. It's that level of an invasion of freedom. And it just gets stuffed into like a reconciliation bill or like a stimulus package. It's not even its own bill. It's not the headline item. It's just like, oh yeah, let's throw in a huge expansion of warrantless surveillance. Fourth Amendment be damned. Because I guess the justification legally would be, well, we're not seizing these records, from individuals. They're from the banks, you see, and you have no privacy when you choose to work with a bank. Oh, and by the way, if you try and not use a bank, we're going to come after you anyway because, oh, it's really suspicious. Why aren't you using a bank? Because banks, they're part of the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve is technically private, but it's created by Congress. It's one of these NGOs. It's a government cutout, just like the National Endowment for Democracy. We all know the National Endowment for Democracy is just the CIA with a different acronym. The Fed is an extension of the regime. The banks are an extension of the Fed. And so therefore, the banks are, one step removed. They're cousins of the federal government. And the federal government, I guess, seemingly acknowledging this because they're going, yeah, we're just going to look into all these records, because they're ours anyway. Who cares about the Fourth Amendment? They're not your records. They're our records because, the banks are ours. You come and you volunteer all this information to the bank, we don't have to go through you. Those aren't your records. You don't own that. Oh, and even if they passed this and the IRS knew literally everything that you did, all the money that you had coming in, all the money you had going out, it's not like they would automate the tax preparation system. You would still have to hire an accountant and do all that yourself, and you would be responsible for making sure everything is accurate. Even though they would have all the information, they could just put it into a computer. That would at least there at least would be some justification, even though it would be clearly a honeypot, but at least they could have some justification for why they're seizing all of your personal records. But no, you still have to go out and hire an accountant and handle all this stuff yourself. They explicitly are just taking these records, or would be if it weren't for Joe Manchin, so that they could invade your privacy and see what you're up to. So thank you, Joe Manchin. I'm glad to have you around. These are dark days. You're not somebody who, in general, I would say I align with, or who I agree with. I would say that about almost every senator in Washington. You're not on my side, but hey, you're holding back Washington from doing some of the most excessive things. You're making Washington a little less horrible than it otherwise is. So with that said, I will see folks back here tomorrow.